Welcome to the next edition of Match Memories. You join me here at the lovely Tunnel Barn Farm, and the event I'm at today has given me a little bit of inspiration to do this Match Memories a little bit different. I'm not going to concentrate on one match, but being at this junior event, the Tunnel Barn Junior Festival, has really made me think, you know, there's lots of these young people, boys and girls, all trying to get into the national teams and do well in these festivals. And a lot of them aren't really going to know my journey from junior fishing through the ranks. Obviously, by the time I'd made the full England team, you know, a lot of people knew, but my journey, that's what I want to really cover from when I was, say, 10, 11 years old to when I was in my early 20s. Because, like I say, I see people being disappointed that they've not been picked, or, you know, over the moon that they have, people putting in a lot of effort. And it's something I did. And I just want to make people aware, you know, of the ups and downs in my sort of junior career. So for me, it all started when I was about 6 or 7, going with my father fishing. He was fishing for Farnborough at the time, winter leagues, matches like that, and I would go along, and quite often, if it was in the summer, have a go on his gear afterwards. So I got into fishing like that. I soon sort of decided that that's what I wanted to do. And Farnborough and District, which was our local club, still is, they had a little junior team, and I quickly progressed into this. You'd have adults coming along and helping you, showing you the ropes. A lot of it was waggler fishing back then, not so much pole fishing at this time, although I did have a 3 or 4 metre whip, which I actually caught my first fish on the Basingstoke Canal. But going into the matches, I quickly progressed, like I say, into the Farnborough team. We had leagues. There was a little junior league. You had Farnborough, Guildford, Farnham, various different teams, and it was a fantastic league, and it sort of blooded me in this sort of competition style fishing, the match sort of style fishing. Pleasure fishing was great. I loved going out and just catching fish, especially in the summer holidays when I was off of school. But I did like the competition side of it. Obviously, going on from there, the sort of biggest team as far as juniors were concerned in our area were Guildford Juniors. And like I say, they really did. They were fishing the nationals, the junior nationals, the intermediate nationals, and doing quite well. So obviously, for me, the natural progression was to go to them, and I did, and we did really well. Then I got to about the age of 14, 15, and back then there was only one junior team, and that was under 18s. And I went on my first trial at Home Pierpont. I actually got invited through the Guildford sort of setup, and I got invited to go on this trial at Home Pierpont. And believe it or not, on my very first trial, they used to place the anglers to sort of see what they could do. And I was actually placed next to Dean Barlow, who is to this day one of my best friends in fishing. Absolutely love Dean, got so much time for him, and a fantastic angler. So I was actually next to him, and at the time he was the main man. You know, he was like 17, you know, a big sort of strapping young guy. I was about 14, quite small, but it was a brilliant learning curve. I fished too short, I didn't feed enough. And like I say, it was men against boys. Dean, you know, really put me in my place. But this made me really determined to go away and make myself a better angler. I'd obviously seen at close quarters how good Dean was at 17, and I really needed to go away and sort of better myself. I'd fished against anglers as good as me, but this was the first time I'd been involved fishing against juniors that were a lot better than me. That year, like I say, I didn't make the team. I was quite disappointed afterwards. I don't know why, because I shouldn't really have expected to get in. My all-round skill set wasn't good enough. However, the following year, there were a couple of trials, again, at various different venues. Home Pierpont was considered, but I think most of them were on the River Soar and the Loughborough Canal. I actually got in this year, and I'd actually grown, not just physically, but as an angler. I'd been away working hard at the venue, you know, at the sort of methods that were very important at that style of international fishing. We were on the River Var in Slovakia. Again, You know, you had people like Wayne Bartholomew, Jonathan Price, people like that in the team, top anglers, Dean Barlow again. And I went for the week. I caught a few fish, but again, I felt slightly out of my depth. It's the first time I'd fished one of these big, deep, powerful rivers, and I really did feel a little bit out of my depth. I didn't fish either day, but again, it was very disappointing. But what this did for me was make me very, very determined to improve myself even further. The following year, the World Championships, Junior World Championships, was going to be on the River Moselle in Luxembourg, and I'd really felt deep down in myself that I'd come on leaps and bounds that year. I'd grown a lot, I'd fished a lot, and I felt like my fishing had got a little bit more aggressive as far as, you know, shipping in and out and placing my rig and balling it with ground bait, and I'd just sort of grown as an angler. The first trial was on the Loughborough Canal. I did really well. I caught some roach on bloodworm. Again, I think I was second or third in the whole trial, and there was 30 or 40 in it this year. It was then narrowed down to about 15 people on the River Soar. Roy Jeffries was manager, Stu Killen was coach. And again, I drew a nice peg where I could fish a long pole, 12.5, 13 metres, and sort of showcased what I thought I'd sort of grown into. Obviously had a bit of disappointment the last 2 years, not getting in the squad, then getting in the squad and not fishing. But again, I think, you know, it just makes you stronger as an angler if you take it on the chin and just learn from it and try and better yourself. And that's definitely what I did. So I managed to get in the team for the River Moselle in Luxembourg. Again, we went, the team had changed, people like Jonathan Price, Dean obviously, Wayne Bartholomew were too old this year, and it was people like Mark Donaldson, Steve Harwood, anglers like that, you know, that are still about to this day. And we went, and to cut a long story short, I did well in practice. Chopworm was good. It wasn't an over pacey river, you know, 2 and 3 grams you could hold still. And the first day, it's quite a funny story because I drew where this crash barrier was at the side of the road, and me and my dad were stood there, and I could see 2 chub, about £1 a piece, down in the weed in the flow, and they were just dodging the weed and going down. And my first bite was a £1 chub, believe it or not, and I'm sure to this day it was one of those fish. I ended up catching 2 chubs, so it was probably both of those, and I caught a few decent roach and perch and ended up 5th in my section, which I was over the moon with. And that sort of, I can't tell you the confidence that instilled in me at the time. You know, from sort of not getting in the squad to getting in the squad to not getting in the team, and then fishing a World Championships at junior level and doing well. The second day, it was a 2-day event. I drew next to a young Belgian lad who was very, very well versed at bloodworm fishing. He won the section easy. I caught a couple of late bream. And managed to finish in the top 5 of the section again. So for me, it was a fantastic result. The following year, the trials were actually at Willow Park. The World Championships were in France on a fish-packed river, again not too pacey, in a Vels limousine in the middle of France. And they decided to have the trials a little bit further down south and at Willow Park, where there was lots of fish at the time. Again, I did well. I worked hard in practice. Myself and Mark Donaldson, we worked really hard in practice to sort of figure out, you know, how we were going to feed and fish. The same sort of tactics and the same sort of process I use to practice now. We both did really well and both managed to get in the team. Funnily enough, a good friend of mine, Martin Green, who's been with Darwin for some years, they parted ways now, but Martin was in the team then, and you know, it just goes to show the sort of, you know, the experience and that Martin has. Back then he was fishing World Championships at junior level. Like I say, the week came, fished really, really well the river. Lots of skimmers, pound and a half. Again, it sort of played into Belgium's hands. They had a fantastic team at bloodworm fishing. They won it quite easily. Personally, I had a 2nd and a 3rd in my section, so again, really sort of gave me the sort of foothold I needed to to really get into international fishing. You've got to bear in mind back then there was no Fishermania, there were none of these big domestic events to get yourself, you know, your teeth into. Maybe back then if they were around I'd have gone down a different path, but international fishing, I was well and truly hooked on it. I wanted to better myself, I wanted to grow as an angler. And back then, once you were 18, that was it was finished. There was no intermediates or, you know, under 25s, it was 18 and then it was finished. And people were saying to me, you know, like, what's the plan now? You know, you're out of the juniors, it's going to be a long wait, you know, you might get a chance to get in the seniors. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm going to get in that senior team. That's what I want to do. I don't want to wait 10 or 15 years. And I started fishing events like the UK Championships. I managed to come third one year, and luckily enough one year, again, you know, when it was on international style venues, so the Gloucester Canal, the Trent, Willow Park and Earlswood Lakes, I managed to win this event. And obviously back then, you know, you had the likes of Alan Scotton completely dominating, Tom Pickering dominating, anglers like Simon Rolfe, Stu Killen, the Vincent brothers, Bob Nudd. You know, you had all these anglers at the fore, and it was a very hard series to win. I'm not saying it's not now, but back then it was all on natural venues. Bloodworm and Joker was allowed, and you're fishing against the best of the best at that style of fishing. So, you know, I won it when I was 21, and again this sort of opened the door. And I got an invite to go on a friendly in France with the adult team, not to fish, not even to be reserved, but to go and basically be the bait boy and help carry the gear. But again, what it did, it gave me the insight to international fishing at the next level up. And that's basically what happened. I got into a couple of friendlies. I won the second day in Italy on a river, and then it was the home internationals. And I had some good and bad results. And then I just progressed to European Championships, and then obviously the World Championships, which I've fished now for the last 25 plus years. But the reason that this means a lot to me, to do this kind of match memories, and we haven't concentrated on one match, I just want to make people aware of the journey. You know, it wasn't all roses, it wasn't all success. There were some hard times, and I've been in a privileged position. My family's been involved with fishing all my life, fishing tackle shops, so I've been in and around it, and it was easier to do well, but you still have to have the passion, the drive, and get up after being knocked down. And that's exactly what I had to do a few times. And I see these young guys, the talent pathway is absolutely fantastic. What Darwin and Tunnel Barn and Lanes are doing here this weekend is absolutely fantastic, and it's so important for these juniors. But what you've got to realise when you're at this age is that, you know, it doesn't always go to plan. You know, keep trying to better yourself, and obviously then you never know what sort of success can come your way. So I hope you've enjoyed the latest edition of Match Memories. It's quite short, but it's like I say, after being inspired by all these young anglers here today, I wanted to share my journey from the juniors through to the seniors with everybody, just in case you didn't know.